What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and this is the Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 4, The Foundling. So I'm kind of mixed on this episode. First of all, the overall premise where Din and Bo-Katan are joining I think they called it a covert. To be honest, I thought they were about to call it a coven, which is not quite a cult, but it's pretty close. But they still are treating it like this is a great thing for them, and I still just don't think so. I don't feel like that's true. And yet we're still the music, the editing, how it's shot. I mean, it feels like, guys, be excited. Bo-Katan is joining them and she's a part of them now. And I just feel like that's not what you were trying to show us originally. That's not where this story was headed before. And now it feels like, nope, that's where we are. You know, because, like, again, they're not bad people. They're not evil or anything. But the idea of what they're doing, first of all, it is very cult-like. You know, the chanting "this is the way" back at each other, but also, I mean, like I said, it's very narrow-minded. It's very closed off from everybody else. Like Bo-Katan talked about, they left Mandalore to die because they felt like, oh well, everybody else has turned their back on it, so we're going to leave everybody and abandon them. That's not a great way to think about it. You know, if everybody else who doesn't agree with us is just wrong and bad and we're not going to let them be a part of us, is that really the people we want to be cheering for? You know, like, you want to see people who are willing to work with others, even if they don't necessarily agree with them. You know, it's kind of, talking about our current political, social climate, it's kind of where we are. If you disagree with me, well, you're evil and you're the bad guys. It's not really a great way of thinking. So it's very weird to see that being treated like this is a great idea. This is a great plan. We're super excited for Din and Bo-Katan. Get back with these cult-like members. I feel like I don't know. The two things that came to mind during this episode of ideas that would be better stories, in my opinion. First of all, if they'd made Bo-Katan and Din a little bit closer, not necessarily romantic or anything, but just if they had made them more of a connection in the second season, this could be like Bo-Katan's turn toward joining the covert. It could be something that, okay, well, this is basically showing be there for the people you care about. Because if Din, say, neglected her, turned his back on her for whatever reason, and because of that, she lost the people of Mandalore, she lost the trust of the people close to her, and so now at rock bottom, she sees this covert that treats all of its members like family, and they're there for her. It could be like a cautionary tale of, see, this is what could happen if you don't give the people you care about time and attention that they need. They could find it in a place where they shouldn't be finding it. That could be an interesting story, but that's not the case. It's not like Din caused this. It was the people around her didn't give her attention, basically turned their backs on her, and so now she's finding it in this cult, and it's being treated like a good thing. Like, see, guys, this cult's a good thing because they're giving her attention. I don't feel like that's great. But also the other story I thought could be interesting is Din and Bo-Katan do join, but not to be a part of it and be, oh, this is the way and all of that, but to show the error of their ways, to show why not trusting others, not working with others is not a good thing. I don't think that's where they're going with that, at least not from what I've seen so far. So yeah, I'm just not on board with this story. I feel like first of all, it feels different than what we were seeing before. And also I feel like it was very rushed. Like Bo-Katan's turn from calling them a cult to now she's just a part of it and willing to help felt very fast. So I'm just a little frustrated with that. But the story in this one, like the individual story, is not too bad. You got the one kid being taken by the flying creature. I will say so it takes him presumably back to its nest, and yet they have a chance to regroup, get together, get in a plane, go fly over there, climb up the mountain, and only then is it showing up to feed the kid to its babies. What? How does that make sense? I feel like, did it take a pit stop somewhere? Like it decided, you know what, flying's too hard. I'm just going to rest on this rock. My kids will be fine if I don't see them for a few more hours. It just felt very weird that the Mandalorians managed to make it back to the nest before the creature did. But I mean, it was fine, just a fun, exciting little mission taking on this flying thing. I will say though, I don't know who is in charge of directing this or whatever. I don't know if it's still what's his name, guy that played Happy, Jon Favreau. I'm pretty sure he was the one that was directing the first 2 seasons. I don't know if he's still in charge of that, and I don't know if maybe this was a writing decision, but somebody saw Jurassic World and said, hey, we want to do that in The Mandalorian, because yeah, the way the whole battle ended was basically just Jurassic World. Flying thing lands in the water, and then water creature comes up and eats it. So that was just like seriously? Could you change it a little bit? Don't just copy off of my homework and make it exactly the same. Do it a little differently. And this was just, well, there's no woman in the flying thing's hand whenever it gets eaten, but it's still basically the same scenario. But the other storyline that was involved with this is we see Grogu being taught the ways of the cult. And again, this is just, it's feeling like it's leading towards, no, guys, these are the good guys. The way they're doing things, this is okay. It's okay to hate on people because they are not doing things the way you think they should be. Whatever. But seeing Grogu remember a bit about his past, remember what happened when he was still at the temple, and seeing some of the stuff involved, it was kind of interesting. I don't know if we're going to see more of that this season. I will say the one guy that showed up to help him on top of the building that had the 2 lightsabers and were fighting off, I will say his acting was a little goofy to me. Like it was like he's pronouncing every move very, not aggressively. It was just a little over the top. Like the way he moved with his lightsabers, it was very like almost like he was doing it slowly intentionally so that way they could speed it up a bit. But it almost felt like he did some moves slow and some moves fast, and it felt unnatural to me. I don't know. It's hard for me to describe, but something about his actions and how he moved was just very weird. And even his voice was not great. It felt like it was, I'm going to put on a voice to make it sound like I'm super important. It almost sounded like God, names are not coming to me right now. Will Shatner. I don't know what's going on with my brain. It's still morning. I've only had 1 cup of coffee, so maybe that's why. But just the way he was speaking, there was not necessarily pauses like Shatner did as Captain Kirk, but the way he spoke, it felt very much like he was trying to play up a like an over-the-top heroic character. And it just didn't read. It felt, again, kind of goofy, kind of like we were in some cartoon and you've got the hero that shows up and I'm going to talk in my hero voice the whole time. It wasn't like that, but it was on the same avenue. But yeah, I mean, again, you had some good moments. You had some exciting moments. The action's still good. The CGI is probably the best in this series of like all of the Star Wars shows. As far as I remember, the CGI in some of the other shows was a little hit or miss. In The Mandalorian, it tends to be pretty solid, and this one was no different. The flying creature that they created, it looked pretty good. It looked very realistic. Obviously, I guess the puppet work on Grogu is pretty good for the most part. Yeah, all in all, I mean, it's okay. It's better than the first few episodes, but it's still not really grabbing me in the sense of here's our main story. The main story still feels like crap to me. So, but that's it for this one. On to the next one. I'll see you there in a minute. And now episode 5, The Pirate. This one is a step in the right direction. First of all, the main story is finally seemingly going in a better direction, for me at least, where we do see at the end of this, the Armorer wants to reach out. She wants to try to make that connection with the people that seemingly throughout most of this series and season, they have been actively trying to push away because they don't follow the way. But clearly she's starting to, I guess, maybe because Bo-Katan mentioned the mythosaur and seeing it, maybe that's when she realized, oh, wait a minute, if she saw the mythosaur, even though she hasn't been walking the way, maybe I'm not entirely correct. And of course, in her mind, or at least how she presents it. She presents it as like, oh no, this has always been foretold, that the coming of a new era or something like that. I don't know. It just, to me, what it sounds like, it sounds like they're the people out there that have these predictions or prophecies and stuff, that when they don't come true, instead of just admitting, oh well, looks like that was wrong, instead of admitting that, they just go, oh no, this was all part of the plan. It was all part of, see, you thought that the prophecy or prediction, or you misinterpreted it. What it actually meant was this. And to me, I'm just like, I mean, come on. At some point you just have to look at it and go, you said that this was going to happen and it didn't. So maybe you were wrong about that. So yeah, I'm sitting here going, you're making it sound like you always knew that at some point this was going to happen. You didn't sound like that before. You made it sound like anybody who did not follow the way was wrong and they were no longer Mandalorian. And now all of a sudden, because she saw the mythosaur, you're like, ah, yes, now it's time to change because it was always supposed to happen someday. Then why didn't you see that change before? Why did you just assume that the change wasn't going to happen until something big, or somebody seeing the mythosaur that doesn't follow the way? Like, it's just whatever. But it does it pushes the main story in the right direction. Like I said, I feel like this is a much better standing for the covert to have, rather than what was before, which is anybody who doesn't follow the way is not even Mandalorian. We don't even acknowledge them. I will say the fact that Bo-Katan is the one that's going to bridge that gap. On the one hand, I get it. I understand why, narratively speaking, she is the one that she was, quote, exiled from the way, and then she saw the mythosaur. She's the one that's lived both lifestyles now. She was outside of the way for so long, but now she has joined them. I get it, narratively speaking. However, the show, it's the Mandalorian, yes, but your main character has always been Din Djarin. And yet, now all of a sudden it feels like she's the main character, she's the Mandalorian. And somebody even left a comment in my review of the first 3 episodes about how it's the Bo-Katan show. At first, I wasn't really feeling that. I understood that Bo was definitely getting a lot more attention. And it felt like, I mean, it wasn't all Din Djarin. It was Din plus his friends. It was Grogu's story as well. It was a little bit of Grief's story in the first season. I don't even remember who was helping him before. The one woman that was kicked off the show because she said some stuff that Disney didn't like. But I'm going to forget, whatever. Names are not coming to me this morning. I'm just got to accept that. But it was always kind of he's the main character, but we're not just going to focus only on him. We've got other characters to focus on as well. But with this instance, it does sort of feel like now Bo-Katan is the Mandalorian. She is the one that's going to connect the people. She's the one that's going to bring Mandalore back to its glory days. But she's not your main character, and that's where I see now where that comment is coming from. I do see why people see this possibly. I don't know if it was just the one person that said that, or if more people feel this way, but I understand why people would feel like, why is she suddenly just the main character? Why is she suddenly the one the prophecy spoke about? Like that. To me, I kind of understand, and not every prophecy has to deal with, oh, well, it was the main character, that was the prophesized one this whole time. It doesn't always have to be that way. But at the same time, whenever you have a character that has been so focused on for 2 seasons, and now all of a sudden this other character comes in, and I like Bo-Katan. I enjoyed her character in Clone Wars. I enjoyed it, the little tidbits we got in Rebels. And I've enjoyed it so far in The Mandalorian. But I don't necessarily feel like she has usurped Din Djarin as the main character, and yet, based on the narrative, that's kind of feels like where the story is going. Is now it's Bo-Katan's story and how she's about to unite all of Mandalore. So I don't know. I'm definitely more so on the fence about this. I don't hate it, but I'm not necessarily loving it either. So we'll see what they decide to do with it. Outside of that, though, the whole battle with the pirates, it was fine. I still don't think the pirates were that interesting of characters, but for what it was a fun, exciting battle. You know, again, the CGI looks really good on the show, so the space battle was well handled, or, well, I guess they were more just flying around in the atmosphere, but the ships and the shooting and the blasters and the explosions, it was all fun. But yeah, as characters, they were not necessarily the most intimidating antagonists. On top of that, we do see more about the New Republic. I don't, again, not going to remember names, but the guy that has helped out Mando before that asked him for help here. It was interesting to see him go to the New Republic and ask for help. And basically the response was, well, they're not a part of the New Republic now, are they? It's like, no, but the New Republic is supposed to be helping everybody after what happened with the Empire. You know, like there is that sense. And I know, of course, the argument will be, oh, well, I mean, that's how we should be with people that don't live just because they're not American, right? But very different argument if that's the point they're trying to make. You can't compare the New Republic protecting planets that are not a part of the New Republic to country protecting citizens who are not in their country. That is, anyways, I'm not going to get into that whole argument there, but it is kind of like, oh, well, yeah, I mean, they didn't want to join up, they didn't want to sign, so, oh, well, I guess they're just going to have to suffer now. It is, again, it's like, we're not the Empire. Are you, though? Are you not the Empire? Because it seems like you might be acting a bit like the Empire in some ways. Like, we have all the power, we get to decide how to use it. I don't know if this is setting up for the New Republic becomes the First Order, or if this is just showing what he says at some point, where essentially the Imperial resistance is growing. But because they don't want to acknowledge it, because they don't want to deal with stuff that's not their problem, it's becoming a bigger issue, and that is going to grow and become the First Order. I'm not entirely sure where exactly it's going to go, but I do like some of the mystery and the intrigue. Obviously, I think everybody knew that Moff Gideon was not actually dead. We didn't see his body. We didn't see him go to trial for it. So to just say, oh no, he was tried and he executed. No, he was not. So to find out he was actually taken somewhere. Now, I don't know if he was actually taken by people who want to help him or if he was kidnapped, because finding out that Beskar was involved, obviously it implicates the Mandalorians. That's not necessarily to say that the Mandalorians took him to save him. There could have been some guys that were Mandalorian that wanted to take him to basically torture him after everything he did. So I could definitely see it going both ways, but there's a little bit of mystery, a little bit of intrigue there that I'm excited to see more of. So the one woman that was part of the third episode that basically tricked the one doctor Pershing and stole his stuff, she was there again. Don't really know. I mean, I know she's supposed to be, I guess, the mole on the inside, but I don't know exactly what she's supposed to be doing right now. You know, there's that whole conversation where she basically says, yeah, let them suffer. You know, it's an effective way of getting our message across. Like, yeah, that's a great way of thinking for somebody who's supposedly liberated. There was also random cameo, never played into anything else. I don't know if he's coming back later this season, but Zeb showed up from Rebels. Is that just, hey, by the way, guys, if you watched Rebels, here's a fun little cameo that you'll see. If you haven't, which I would think is probably about 50% of the audience watching The Mandalorian, you have no idea who this is. I mean, I know, like, my dad watches all the live action shows. He didn't really have any desire to watch the animated shows until I told him, hey, by the way, the animated shows kind of tie in. Ahsoka was introduced in Clone Wars, and now she has her own show, which is essentially a continuation of the ending of Rebels. So you wouldn't know any of this if you hadn't watched the animated shows. So why are you throwing in Zeb randomly for a few lines? But if they haven't watched Rebels, nobody knows who this is. And why is he getting lines? Well, because it's a cameo. All right, well, half of your audience isn't going to understand that. And that's where I do feel like they need to do a better job of, I think, advertising. Because again, I think the idea that, oh, well, the animated shows are for kids is not necessarily true. Again, I feel like the animated shows are typically more mature, but I feel like they still probably don't market them very well. Because if I had to guess, they probably advertise them like they're advertising for kids. They probably show the goofy stuff that happens. They probably show some of the quippy one-liners that kids would like. So that's where I am on it. I don't know if Zeb's going to come back. Maybe they're going to continue his story here somehow. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really seem to matter too much. It just feels like a little side thing that they threw in, and is a fun little cameo for anybody who gets the reference, which I was one of the, again, probably half the audience that did. The final thing to talk about is the moment whenever the Mandalorians do decide to go help. That scene for me could have only played out one of two ways. And the problem is both ways are very frustrating. Because you have Din gets up and gives his spiel about why they should help and all of that stuff. And then the other guy who gets up, I think it's like Livka or something. I don't remember his name. I'm not even sure what I'm trying to remember. But he gets up, and of course he's been the one that's always pushing back against anything Din has to say. He's been I disagree with the main characters. I'm the stubborn bullhead that you're not going to convince. So he gets up and starts giving his speech about how he lost brothers fighting against Grief Karga, how the Empire did all this stuff, how blah, 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 blah. I'm thinking there's one of two ways this is going to end. His speech is going to end. Either he says no, and it's going to piss me off because, dude, you're an idiot. Or he's going to say yes, which is going to piss me off because, dude, predictable. And so, of course, he says yes. I'm like, all right, so just predictable. And, of course, predictably, it's because they saved his son in the last episode. So it's just, I don't know. Why even have that scene? You know that the Mandalorians are probably going to help. In the end, even if they initially say no, they're probably going to show up and help anyway. Because, Din and Bo-Katan have both done a good job of proving themselves. Why would they say no? And yet it still feels like you have to drag this scene out and make it this long. Okay, well, he's going to get up. Oh, look at that. Oh, he's giving this speech about how they can't trust. Oh, he said they should trust him. He said that they should help. Yeah. Well, of course. Why do we spend 5 minutes on it of this episode? Which I know doesn't seem long, but in the context of an episode, which this one was 44 minutes, that's over 10% of your episode. And actually, 44 that accounts for the credits as well, so it's probably closer to 40 minutes. So you just wasted all of this time that we could have spent somewhere else. Maybe showing a bit more how the New Republic is functioning, maybe showing a bit more why this random woman who's clearly still working for Moff Gideon and clearly hasn't been liberated, what is she doing? How is she helping Moff Gideon? What are her plans there? You could have been showing us some of that stuff, but instead we have to sit here and go through this whole speech and go through the whole, oh, well, he's not going to help out, guys. Oh, well, oh, he is. It's frustrating. Because again, if you've seen any show ever, you know what's going to happen. And yet they're acting like everybody who's watching this is your first show that you've ever watched. And maybe for some people it is. And if so, they're going to be all like, oh, this is awesome. He said he was going to not help at first. He made it seem like it, but then he changed his mind. This was so cool. But most people know exactly what's going to happen because it's a cliche. So, but yeah, that's about it for this one. Again, steps in the right direction. The main story is finally progressing in a positive manner where I don't have as bad feelings about the covert anymore. So that's a good progression in my opinion. So on to the final of these 3 episodes, and I will see you there in just a minute. And now episode 6, Guns for Hire. Here it is. The one episode that I knew about that I figured I was probably going to dislike, and boy, did I not understand what was in store for me, because even outside of the cameo that I was not looking forward to, the rest of this episode was just awful. And continuing on from the whole, it's now the Bo-Katan show, it's almost like she's gotten the Felicity treatment. And if you don't know what that is, if you've ever seen Arrow or heard of Arrow, one of the side characters who is not Oliver, the main character, the Green Arrow, was Felicity. And at first she starts off as like this quirky little nerdy girl who has a crush on Oliver because he's, beefcaked up and stuff. And eventually he ends up getting feelings for her too, which doesn't really make much sense because they don't have a whole lot in common, but it happens. They get together. And after that point, it suddenly becomes the Felicity show where everything Oliver does is stupid and wrong and numbskull, stubborn, bullheaded, whatever you want to call it. Everything he's doing is wrong. Even when things are being proven right, the way he does things are proven to be right. He's very successful in what he does as a superhero. Felicity still would scold him and tell him that he was wrong, tell him he needs to do it a better way. He tries to do it her way, it doesn't work. He ends up apologizing to her at the end of the episode, and then they do it her way again, and somehow it works, even though it didn't before. And it just became a formula, and it was so frustrating. Kind of what happened here with Bo-Katan is Din goes in, does things his way, is successful. She scolds him, tells him he's doing it the wrong way, and then the next scene, he's trying to do it his way and it's not working this time. She's like, see, we got to do things my way. Well, it wouldn't have worked if you did it your way before. So maybe don't act like your way is the only way to do things. Like, oh, see, my way was proven to be right this time. Okay, well, how is asking that one droid that wasn't giving you answers going? It wasn't doing a thing. But thankfully, Din found the one that was malfunctioning. So that it's just very frustrating. And I knew as they were showing the previously on, and they showed how the one thing captured Din on Mandalore, he dropped the Darksaber, or it took it from him, and then she took it back from the creature. All I could think was, oh, so that's where they're going with this. Since she showed up and saved him and took the Darksaber from the thing that took the Darksaber from him, that means it's now going to be hers, right? So sure enough, because magic of the Elder One and stuff, the owner of the Elder One is whoever defeated the person who had it before. So that's I'm sorry, the Darksaber. I don't know why I called it the Elder One. That's so weird. It's not like it's the exact same thing that Harry Potter did. So that whole story was just stupid. Of course, the fight at the end is going to happen, and of course she's going to defeat the guy. Again, in my mind, I'm thinking this all could have been Din Djarin doing this. Because, first of all, he's not Mandalorian by birth. So having him be the bridge that connects the people of the Way and the rest of the Mandalorians that are now mercenaries, he would have been a great branching point because he's been in the cult of the Way for so long. He grew up in it, basically. But he spent some time away from it. He was exiled from it. But now he's trying to reconnect. And maybe he's the one that bridges because he's been in this way for so long, but then he lived outside of there for a few years or a couple years or however long it was. So he would be a good branching point, and Bo-Katan could be the one that sort of speaks to the rest of the Mandalorians that don't trust him because they know he comes from the cult. Meanwhile, the cult, he does go and get himself cleansed, so that's why they trust him. And so that's how he's able to bring them together. He would have been a great branching point, and he's your main character of the show. So why did you flip focus and go, you know what? Bo-Katan, she just randomly joined the Way for a few days, and now all of a sudden she's the branching point? Why? Why? Is it just for the girl power? Is that the only reason they did this? Because if that's so, that's weak. Narratively speaking, it doesn't make sense based on the first 2 seasons you showed us. It doesn't make sense why suddenly she is the main focus and she is the one that's going to be that branch. So it was all set up. It was all there it could have been both of them. Din and Bo-Katan could have both been the bridging gap. Again, Bo-Katan coming from these mercenaries that stepped away from the Way. Meanwhile, obviously, Din is a part of the cult that is still a part of the Way or whatever. That would have been a nice little... They both connect. They both manage to work together. And so now have both of them work together to bring all of Mandalore back. But instead, it's nope, it's Bo-Katan. Bo-Katan's doing all of it. She is the boss. She's the boss lady. She's going to get it done. Din is he's a goofy guy, he's not that good at stuff. He gets captured a lot. Bo-Katan is just so clearly better than him. Honestly, we should rename the show to the Bo-Katan Show because she's just the best, right, guys? Right? And again, I like Bo-Katan. I like her as a character. I've liked previous versions of her. For whatever reason in this show, they've made her more insufferable because it feels like they're trying to... It's like... I compare it to, I'm going to make another DC CW reference, but thinking about Iris in The Flash. I liked Iris as a character. I thought she was badass. The way she helps out with all of these superhuman battles, she's very intelligent. She's able to give orders from behind the scenes. It's almost like she's playing chess because she could see all the moves and she knows how everybody can utilize their skills to the best of their abilities. So I felt like, cool, you're showing how she's effective. But then all of a sudden the show's like, no, she needs to go out there and she needs to fight. She needs to show how badass she is by fighting. That's not her strength. But the show wanted so badly to show us, the audience, why she's so badass that they just kept piling on to the point where she became insufferable as a character. It's kind of what's going on with Bo-Katan. She's already a badass character. She's already shown how she's a badass character in previous instances of her. Why do we need to go through this whole thing where now all of a sudden, no guys, she is so awesome. She is the bridge that's going to connect all of Mandalore back together. That's how awesome she is. Now you're overselling it. You don't need to do that. So it's just very frustrated with that. But unfortunately, that's not the worst part of this episode. No, what gets even worse is the whole story. You've got the droids, everything to do with that. And wasn't that interesting? They didn't even care why it was happening. You have this whole setup where droids are malfunctioning. This one guy, played by Christopher Lloyd, who, I'm not going to lie, I feel like he's gotten to a point where his acting is just not as convincing. Because I feel like, nothing wrong with this, but he has gotten a little too old, I think. And it's just, you can tell he's not quite emoting the same way that he used to be able to. So great to see him, but I just don't think he's at that same level of acting that we want to see. You know, it's almost a little sad to see nowadays. But you've got this whole thing where he could easily turn off the droids. Bo-Katan even asked him, why don't you just turn off the droids? And he says, no, I can't do that. Gives his little reason. I'm like, all right, so if he's the bad guy, super predictable. He was the bad guy. And then on top of that, find out he's a separatist. And he starts talking about Count Dooku. I'm like, okay, well, Bad Batch brought up Count Dooku, so maybe we're going to see a resurgence. I know, I think it's Tales of the Jedi, which I didn't watch, but I plan to go back at some point and watch it. But I'm pretty sure that also talked a bit about Count Dooku. So who knows? Maybe Count Dooku, I know he's dead, but maybe there's like some followers of him or something, and then she just zaps him in mid-speech. And I'm like, okay, so it doesn't even matter why he did this. It just, he did it. Okay, so this was all pointless. Didn't connect to the main story where it feels like maybe the Empire is building in the background. It didn't connect to anything to do with the Mandalorians. It was just, here's a little side quest. Doesn't connect to anything else, though. Okay. And that's not even the worst part of it, because, of course, the worst part has to be the fact that they got Lizzo. Because she's the popular thing to have in your show, right? Surely there's not going to be some awful things that come out about her, about how she's not a good person. Right? Especially after you got rid of somebody from the first two seasons because of their interactions online. But then as soon as people point out stuff about another person who you decided to hire because she was popular, whatever. I'm not a fan of her. First of all, her type of music isn't my type of music anyway. So not a fan of the music. I also personally feel like she is one of those people, because there are some people that I think get popular and get attention, not because they're talented, but because of who they are, because of their draw, their personalities, their, whatever it is. Lizzo, I think, she is, I mean, she checks a lot of boxes for why people want to see someone like her succeed, because if she can, so can I, type of thing. And could you not have a better role model than that? Like, that's where I get really frustrated whenever it's like, oh, well, they look like me, so I got to support them. No, you don't. There are better people out there to support who are either more talented or just better people in general. Just saying. But no, I knew she was in this show. I knew that she was in this show. I didn't know it was this episode, but I knew she was going to show up at some point. I knew also she showed up alongside Jack Black, which just made me really sad, because I love Jack Black. He's a great He's a funny actor, seems like a really good guy. I hated the fact that I knew they were going to be sharing the screen together, and every scene, it was such a depth and quality. You know, he would make some funny little line. His facial expressions are great too. And then you cut to her, and her facial expressions barely changed. Like, she just talked like this the whole time, and then occasionally after she was done talking, give a little smile just to show that she can emote. You know, she's not Kristen Stewart, but when she's talking, you would think she was. Oh my god, I was prepared for it to be bad, and I was just about right on that. It was really, really bad. And then, I mean, you get even further, and it feels like, again, they're trying to build her character up to be more than she is, because you have this whole thing between her and Christopher Lloyd's character at the end, where he's talking about, you know, oh, it's that guy. I'm so sorry that I ever harmed you, my lady, or made you upset. I beg for your forgiveness. Almost like he was so willing to die for his beliefs. But then all of a sudden he's in front of her, and she's just the most amazing thing ever. And oh my gosh, you can't just have characters talk about other characters as if they're the most amazing thing, but not show us why. And that's the thing. They never show us. They tell us that she is supposed to be so beloved and all this stuff. They have this random little thing where they're playing, looked like croquet, a version of it, like space croquet. And then Grogu helps her, and everybody starts cheering for her as if she's so amazing. It was Grogu that did it. I don't know. It was just painful. It was painful to get through. As soon as the episode started, as soon as they got to the city and I saw Jack Black and Lizzo sitting there, I'm like, oh no, this is the episode that's going to be painful. And yeah, nothing about it was redeeming. And in fact, I went to look on IMDb just to check a couple of the actors just to see, because there were a couple that, like the battle droid, I wanted to check and see if it's the same voice actor. I think, I actually don't remember now. I looked it up during the episode, and now I've forgotten whether or not it was the same guy. But I saw that this was the lowest rated. And honestly, I mean, 6.4 kind of surprised me. Can't believe it got that high. But no, it was bad. Easily the worst episode of the season. Nothing good about it. It was pretty boring and really frustrating at times. So, but yeah, 2 more episodes. We'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see if they can turn it around, give me something interesting for the final 2. But based on what I've seen so far, I don't have high hopes. It feels like they are really trying to push that Bo-Katan is the main character. And again, I don't mind her as a character, but the way that they've pushed her on us, it feels forced. It feels like the writing team is trying to force this idea that she is so much better than everybody else, and she is the one. She is the Mandalorian. The show's about her now. And that's not what I've seen for the first 2 seasons. But that's it for me, so let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What were your thoughts on these 3 episodes? Let me know. We can talk about and discuss all that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future Mandalorian reviews, and until next time, I hope you guys have a great day, and I will talk to you all later. Peace out.